Hello, I'm Laura VanArendonk Baugh. Let's talk about Koyasan. So Koyasan is an incredibly important location in Japan, very definitely in religious history, but also just cultural history of any variety as well. It is a little confusing, a little misleading. First of all, let's mention where we are. We're south and west near Osaka and Nara, and you can drive in if you have a car. You can take a long bus ride. You make a very, very long hike up. But the fastest and probably the most fun way to get into Koyasan is to take the cable car. They've had a funicular system since 1930. They got brand new cars in 2019. Not the first time since 1930, but the newest of the new cars. And this photo I took in April of 2019, and I want to say the cars had only been running a couple of weeks at that point. So very shiny, very new. And these cars will run up 328 meters in 5 minutes. So that's over 1,000 feet in 5 minutes. Way easier than hiking up. So I recommend the cable cars. Koyasan is, as I said, it's referred to a little bit confusingly. Koyasan, if you just hear the name, you think, okay, that's a mountain, Mount Koya. And you'll frequently see it translated Mount Koya. But it is actually a temple complex. And Kongobuji, the temple has a mountain name as well, as many temples do, and its mountain name is Mount Koya. So you are actually referring not to a geologic feature, but to a temple complex when you refer to Koyasan. This is the headquarters and the founding location of Shingon Buddhism, which was brought by Kukai, later known as Kobodaishi. And as I said, even if you go to Wikipedia and you put in Kongobuji, it'll say, oh yeah, that's a temple located on Mount Koya. No, it is Mount Koya. It's not actually a mountain peak itself. It's actually nestled in a little valley or plateau between several mountains, which we're going to talk about. But it was settled with imperial permission officially in 819. It is a World Heritage Site. And there are, I can't find an exact number, but anywhere between 120 or 130 temples there today, all centered around the original temple complex, which we will talk about here. But there are many, many practicing temples there today. As I said, it's a very important site, and you can stay at a lot of those temples. This is a great place to experience Shoji Nirori, which we are going to talk about in another video. If you haven't caught that, you can look for that. This is where koya tofu was invented, and that is freeze-dried tofu, if you're not familiar with that. There's like sesame cookies, the paint, and just all kinds of great things. I'm going to talk about food. That's how that is. But shukubo, which is staying in a temple as a way stop, is offered by many of the temples there, and so you can actually just instead of getting a hotel or a bed and breakfast, you stay in the temple, and you have the option then of joining in temple services or other things like that. But let's jump back to how did all of this get started. So Kobodaishi and is a monk who originally went to China to study Buddhism. There are lots of stories attached to him. He is credited with inventing the kana, which were being developed at this time. I don't know that we can say he did it all personally, but he may well have contributed. Likewise, the Iroha poem, which is closely associated with the syllables and the kana, again, may or may not have been him personally, but he was in the right time for that and probably did contribute on some level. But he was frustrated with the state of scriptures. This is going to sound really familiar if you've been listening into the Sayuki talks or are familiar with Xuanzang. But one of the things that, while he was studying, he encountered a monk who was in Japan who had been studying at Nalanda University, which is where Xuanzang had gone to retrieve scriptures and study there, if you remember these things. And So, and he's like, oh, I should go to China and study to get better information there. And so he actually did join a delegation of monks traveling to China. One of those other monks was Saicho, and the two of them returned to Japan in the same year and separately founded Shingon Buddhism and Tendai Buddhism. Saicho did ask to be initiated in Kukai's school, but he was given only the first two levels of initiation, not the third, and this was the source of some salt between the two schools in future years. So what you see here depicted is a letter from Kukai to Saicho, which I just think is pretty cool that we have that preserved. What we have here, this is called a sankosho or a kongosho or a vaja, depending on where you are. This is a Indian weapon which was then modified into a Buddhist ritual implement. And so this one having 3 prongs or 3 points on it is a san kosho for 3. And while the story goes, he was studying in China. Kukai threw his sankosho toward Japan, and it flew all the way to Japan, and it lodged in a pine tree, though he did not know that at the time. And then later, when he returned to Japan and he was looking for a place to found his temple, he ran into a hunter with a couple of dogs, and his hunter's like, oh yeah, I know where your sankosho is. It's stuck in a tree. I'll take you there and show you. And he walked him to a pine tree and he showed him, and then the hunter disappeared. And later it was revealed that that hunter is Koya who is one of the Shinto deities of this area. And so we have now the Shinto blessing, I guess, to go ahead and build the temple here as well. So Koyasan, the temple complex, sits, as I said, in a bit of a valley surrounded by mountain peaks. And so this kind of gives it the appearance of a lotus, which also made it a really great place to put a Buddhist, to start a Buddhist school, but a Buddhist temple. And it is, they were attempting to do a 3-dimensional mandala, or a map of the universe, with Koyasan being at the center of that. So just if you're familiar with mandala and what they're doing there, that makes sense. Because we had the Shinto deities involved in the founding, there is a Shinto shrine included in the Buddhist Garan, that temple complex. So this is sitting right next to the other Buddhist buildings. That tree that the sankosho got stuck in is still here. You can still see it. This is the Sanko no Matsu. It is right next to the Konpon Daito, and which you'll see here in just a second. And a fun feature, this is, this pine tree, that they generally have clusters of leaves, and so this tree's leaves, or needles really, grow in clusters of 3 because the sanko got stuck in it. There you go. So apparently it's considered good luck if you find one of those little needle clusters on the ground and pick it up for yourself. There's not a lot down there, as you can imagine. They tend to get picked up as soon as they fall. Definitely do not pull one off the tree. Rude. Probably not good luck either. Just don't. So the Danjo Garan, a Garan is as I mentioned, the complex that contains, the lecture halls, the scripture storage buildings, bell towers, all of the things together. And so you'll see this is the Kondo Hall. Here in this picture, we have the Konpan Daito, and this is the one that is, I mentioned that 3-dimensional mandala. This is the exact center of it. And as you can see, these are, pretty large, pretty amazing buildings. They have been maintained and rebuilt because it's been a long time since the 9th century. And, it takes one lightning strike to start a fire and that sort of thing. But they are pretty true to the originals, despite several fires in the last 1,000 years. So the Kongobuji is the central temple, and this one is the head temple of Shingon Buddhism. So you will see this referenced a lot. Also, a building that I really quite liked is the Fudo-do, and this is dedicated to Fudo Myoe, who is one of the deities, but it used to be closer to the gates, the front gates, and it was moved after some fires, and I think just preserve it. What I find cool about this building is this is an original wooden building from the Heian era, which is a pretty good state of preservation. This was first built in 1198 on the order of one of the Heian princesses, Hachijo, and women, of course, were not allowed on Koyasan. You can't come into Buddhist temple sites as a female. And until 1872, when in the Meiji Restoration, the government said, hey, actually, Buddhist monks can marry now, and then women can come into places. I think, I have in the back of my mind that while that was legally allowed at that point, practically speaking, it didn't really apply until the 20th century for Koyasan specifically. But I was not able to locate and nail that down with actual sourced information before having to make this video. So I could be totally wrong on that. Definitely right about 1872. Not sure about if it took longer than that for women to actually go ahead and come up into the temple complex. But that said, this is an amazing building that it was moved to this location in the early 20th century. I think just to protect it because of the fires. But as I said, women could not come onto the Koyasan for most of its existence. But women would want to come to such an important site. And so you had a trail that would circle the complex over these many mountain peaks. That was the woman's trail, the Nyoindo. And then there were also buildings, inns, I guess, to accommodate them at several points around the trail. So there used to be multiple of these. Now there is only one that's remaining, and you can see that in this picture here. And I hiked a very, very small part of this. I would like to do more with Susan Span, who's an author of books set in historical Japan. And she's done a lot of hiking and research here. And she told me that this was one thing that the women would say. They were going to visit their relatives who were at the temples, perhaps being monks there or something. And of course, they can't go and visit them directly. So they would go and they would hike around the peaks where they could look down and hear the temple bells and such. And that's how you visited your relatives, which is very sweet and very sad. So, but here, Susan and I did a little bit of hiking on this site so that you can just see a little bit of of this women's trail going around here. So, women, I have to interrupt very quickly. You'll see Susan ahead of me on this trail. Susan, we were wrapping up. We had just, I think, the day before finished her 100th peak, and she did her 100 peaks in a year, which is recorded in her book Climb, which you should check out. And so I thought I was in pretty decent shape. I was not in shape to keep up with a woman who has been summiting 2 mountains a week for the last year. So she's always ahead of me in the photos. Anyway, in 835, Kukai, again later known as Kobodashi, is believed to have entered eternal meditation. The more cynical would say he died, but the belief is that he is in eternal meditation in his mausoleum and is looking forward to the Buddha of the future. And that leads us to Okunoin, which is where Kukai is waiting and meditating. This is the largest cemetery in Japan, and it is amazing. I really, really love this place. So this is where, this is the traditional entrance, Ichinohashi, the first bridge. There is another way that people come in today that has a little bit of a shorter walk through, but that's not what you want to do. Susan brought me in this way, and this is definitely the way you want to do it. As you walk in, again, this is an ancient and huge, huge cemetery. I don't think I've ever found numbers that really agree. There's nobody's got a really definitive count, but everyone agrees there's at least 250,000 memorials and headstones here. And they date back for centuries. So you have these amazing stone markers from all different eras, and statuary and stupas and all sorts of things. And I just absolutely loved this. It was a fascinating place to just look at things. There are so many amazing things here, but there are some key spots that are particularly famous. On the left here, you'll see this is a nuns, Buddhist nuns memorial, but it's got that little notch carved out of it, and if you put your ear up to that notch, you can hear the screams of those in judgment in hell. So there's a little reminder to make good karmic choices there. In the middle is a little shrine that is holding the sweating Jizo. So that's Asekaki Jizo, who is sweating with the strain of others' suffering. On the right is the Sugatami no Ido, that is a reflection well. And the story goes that if you look into this well and you do not see your reflection, you will die within 3 years. This was of particular interest to Susan and me as we came and approached, because Susan was doing her 100 Peaks climb during her treatment and recovery from breast cancer. So she had a double mastectomy and then immediately started climbing mountains. This is why she's amazing. And we were doing this trip and this hike shortly before her follow-up appointment. So we really needed to see her reflection. I looked in, I did not see my reflection, pulled back, reassessed, looked in again, and I did see my reflection. So still here. I'm 2 years in. We'll see. But I love this cemetery. There are so many amazing pieces here. Just some absolutely gorgeous buildings and stupa and memorial. This one is Uesugi Kenshin. He's a significant feudal lord. He died 1578. So just, again, 1578, and here's his memorial. We just don't have that as much in the US. So as you travel through, and again, there are newer parts because this is a really huge cemetery. The newer parts look newer. And so this is why you want to go in the original entrance, so you can catch all those amazing older parts of the cemetery. The newer parts, because this is a Buddhist cemetery and because this is a very important Buddhist cemetery, a lot of people have put markers here, even if they are not interred here in any form. And you will have companies here put up memorials for their employees. There are a lot of war memorials. I saw things from World War II, from World War I, from wars with Korea, that sort of things, where they have erected, for all the fallen on both sides in this particular conflict, or those sorts of things. Those are also in the older section. One of the more famous ones that everyone talks about, which I did not see, so I cannot give you a photo, but is a pest company that put up a memorial to all the insects that they have had to kill, because this is a Buddhist cemetery, right? So as you go further in, you will come to the temple complex within Okunuin, and that, and you can see there's a sign here in this photo. You can see where it says, at this point there's no food, at this point there's no photography and such. So I will not be showing you photos from past this point, but this is where you're going to have your lecture hall. This is where you're going to have the lantern hall and the scripture storage, and we're going to approach Kobodaishi's mausoleum where he is in meditation. And the temples, I mentioned there are so many temples at Koyasan, and they take turns bringing food to Kobodaishi in his meditative state. So the only thing I am going to show you from this area is a photo from inside the lantern hall, the Torodo. And again, this is supposed to be a no photo area. Obviously someone, decided to take a photo of sitting on the on the railing. So I don't really feel terrible about using this photo that was a little bit disrespectful in the first place. But I am just going to take this opportunity to say, traditionally, these lanterns have been burning since the Han era in the 9th century, continuously, just in honor of Kobodaishi and this place. So, okay. So this is a photo that was actually taken from outside the temple complex. This is the road that goes by toward that hiking trail that I mentioned. But we can look back, and this is the Gobyo Bashi, or the Mausoleum Bridge, that actually leads to his mausoleum. So traditionally, it is considered respectful to bow at that first bridge as you enter the cemetery, and then bow at this bridge as well before crossing. And then on the left in this picture, you're just going to see the backs just a little bit, and you've got a row of black stone jizo, and those are the Mizumuke jizo, and there's water from that stream that's pumped up in front of them, and you would pour water on the jizo while saying prayers. So that is, a little bit that you can see here taken from outside of that complex, just shot down the stream. What you cannot see, it's way on your left in this picture, it's going to be well out of shot, is the Morocco Stone, and this is it's a stone that's encaged within I guess a cabinet of stone and wood, and the idea is that you would put in your hand and lift the stone from its lower level to a higher level using just one hand, and if the stone feels heavy to you, you have a lot of karmic sin. And if the stone feels light to you, you're in good shape. And I attempted this. I'm just going to say I'm really glad that that's not what I'm relying on to keep me out of hell. So it was very, very heavy stone. I don't know what that is, but we're all in bad shape, guys. So that's the Morocco Stone. I do want to mention the koyamaki. This is the tree that you have been seeing in all of these photos. A lot of these trees are centuries old. They're enormous and they're gorgeous, and they are positively primeval. Well, it turns out that's because they're actually primeval. This species has been around since the Jurassic period. They used to cover a significant part of the planet. Now they're found in only 2 locations, so they are considered an at-risk species. But Koya is one of only 2 locations where they still grow, and so it is called the koyamaki. So they are naturally water resistant and rot resistant, so it was a really useful tree species to build boats and resistant furniture and buildings and that sort of thing. As you can see, some of those memorials have been there for a long time. But that is the tree species that you're going to see all around there, and they are just amazing. It was I don't know if you've been in really truly old growth forests, as I've only been in, had the opportunity even a few times, just due to the nature of what we do with the world today, and it is a really transporting experience. So, okay, well, that is our very fast run through of Kouyasan. I have included a few resources here for you, and I have here, Susan had a whole series of informative pieces on her website. She's been to Kouyasan repeatedly, and she's actually set one of her novels there, which I recommend. But so if you have questions, if you want to throw them in the chat or send them to me, I'd be happy to chat with you about this. Thanks for coming along on this little journey with me. Later.